and national levels. And second speaker is Mr. Mathura Vikas Tripura. He is the Executive Director of Jabrang Kalyan Samiti in Bangladesh. And he is also National Awardee for special contributions to the mother language. And he will talk Bangladesh government's initiatives to protect the language of indigenous peoples in line with International Mother Language Day. And Surapon, she is country representative in Thailand's Pestalozzi Children's Foundation. So she will talk on mother tongue based multilingual education in Thailand 2007 to 2022, lesson learned and way forward. And today also AIPP will launch a book. So under the human rights program of AIPP, so a book already is ready in AIPP. So formally this book will launch, and then Suhail will do this part. So then after finishing all the discussion by the panel, so we'll have around 20 minutes for the questions and answering. So the participants, they will ask questions to the panel members, and then the speaker, they will answer. So today, the program, who have done the registrations, definitely directly they will join this event. And second, we have also the Facebook Live. So everyone's have access who can see. They also can watch us this event. So right now, again, all the panel members and so all the participants, who are participating from different countries. So I would like welcomes and thanks to all for joining us. So right now, as per the schedule, I would like to request Mr. Dharmadip Bashamatari. He is the program officer of human rights programs in AIPP, to read out the statements of AIPP that has been published on the occasions of International Mother Language Day. Mr. Dharmadip.
Thank you, Charu. And I duly welcome all the participants in today's event, that is International Mother Language Day. We are celebrating at AIPP office and connecting with the people around through online. So I welcome you all and request you to listen to our statement from the AIPP. A statement by Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, International Mother Language Day 2022. So AIPP's theme is our roots, our language, mother tongue based education for our future. So we begin the statement with the quotes from Assembly of First Nation National Chief Perry Belgrade. So International Decade of Indigenous Language demonstrate a strong international commitment to restore, support, and strengthen indigenous language. Our language are our identity, our wisdom, our worldview. They must not be lost, unquote. So International Mother Language Day is celebrated worldwide on 21st February every year after it was first announced by UNESCO on 17 November 1999 and formally recognized by United Nations General Assembly with the adoption of United Nations resolution in 2002. This is to specially commemorate the importance of mother language and its promotion, preservation, and protection. This year, the 23rd edition of International Mother Language Day is being observed with the theme Using Technology for Multilingual Learning, Challenges and Opportunities. The objective is to contribute to the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 4, by recognizing the role of teachers in promoting multilingual teaching and learning through technology and considering the potential role of technology, including traditional media such as radio and television, in supporting multilingual teaching and learning, and to discuss action needed to ensure the design and delivery of technology-enabled multilingual teaching and learning. Language is the wheel of society. It is our identity and culture. It is through language the world communicates with each other. We preserve tradition, customs, history, and memory in language. Through this, we build our future. All the languages in the world have equal importance, but the mother language holds a special place in the heart of every individual, because it is believed and established fact that the education based on the first language or the mother tongue must begin from the early years, as early childhood care and education is the foundation of learning. According to study, there are some 7,100 known languages in the world. Among them, majority is spoken by the indigenous peoples. In Asia alone, 32% or 2,300 languages are spoken by people where most of the indigenous populations live. They have greater cultural diversity and have created and spoken a large number of languages existing in the world. The cultural diversity and richness have given the indigenous people a distinctive and enduring identity. It is a matter of great concern that we are losing language at an alarming rate of one language per 2 weeks. It is estimated by linguists that by the end of the century, it will fall to thousands or hundreds, if not cheap. The indigenous people's language, who are a minority by number, is more vulnerable to language loss. This is because the indigenous peoples follow the oral traditions, lack a formal writing system, often overwhelmed by mainstream language. In most countries, education is imparted in the national language, and indigenous language is sidelined. This puts indigenous children at a disadvantage and stall their natural learning ability. This problem is compounded when the education is digitalized. Access to technology is a huge challenge for indigenous people. We have witnessed a grim scenario during the COVID-19 pandemic. While education was imparted through digital means, the indigenous children and youth barely could continue their learning. The indigenous people are the wide range of knowledge holders and speakers of most of the language in the world. The smooth knowledge transfer can be possible only through the hands-on learning by indigenous youth, but not in the modern classroom setting. Therefore, there is an urgent need to enhance the intergenerational transmission of indigenous knowledge as a complement to the mainstream education. More efforts should be made to bring indigenous language and knowledge into school curricula and to move to learn back to the community, thus reaffirming the status of elders as knowledge holders. This reflects the theme of AIPP, our roots, our language, mother language-based tongue education for our future. The celebration of International Mother Language Day this year also holds special importance, with the UNESCO declaring 2019 as the International Year of Indigenous Language, and the United Nations proclaiming the International Decade of Indigenous Language from 2022 to 2032. The declaration and the proclamation are proposed with 5 basic objectives to commence the preservation and promotions of indigenous language. 1, increasing understanding, reconciliation, and international cooperation. 2, creation of favorable conditions for knowledge sharing and dissemination of good practices concerning indigenous languages. 3, integration of indigenous languages into standard setting. 4, empowerment through capacity building. 5, growth and development through the elaboration of new knowledge. The declaration is a ray of hope for the indigenous peoples across the globe in terms of preservation and preserving and promoting the vital aspect of their culture and identity. This can generate new idea and help build a long-term strategy to counter language loss. This effort also contributes to the 2019 Cali commitment to equity and inclusion in education and the United Nations International Decade of Indigenous Language, which places multilingualism at the heart of indigenous peoples' development. AIPP celebrates this auspicious occasion of International Mother Language Day, emphasizing the need for special attention to indigenous language and calling on the government, UN agencies, and other stakeholders to commit and create enabling conditions, support the effort, and foster multiculturalism with the inclusive vision contextualizing with COVID-19 recovery. Long live indigenous language. I thank everyone for giving attention to the statement from the AIPP. Thank you. Back to Charu, please.
Thank you very much, Dormodip Bashamatari, for nicely read out the statement. So at the global and international level now, the issue also emerges. Most importantly, the indigenous self-government and then self-determinations. So this year we are also thinking how is the connections deeply, the connections we have, the language issue with the indigenous self-determinations and self-government. So right now, here is a speaker, Mr. Game Simre, Secretary General of AIPP. So now he will talk on it, the importance of protecting indigenous language in the light of indigenous people's self-determinations or interconnectivity between indigenous language and self-determinations. Yeah, Mr. Gem.
Yeah. Thank you, Charu, and good morning and greetings to all of you, particularly my indigenous brothers and sisters who have also come here to celebrate this important day. And of course, I would also like to acknowledge the steering committee members, as well as people who are working on this important subject matter and have come here to share with us their experience and knowledge so that we can address this very important issue. Yeah, the topic that I'm asked to speak about today is the issue of protecting indigenous languages and its intersection with self-determination. Now, let me first begin by saying that language is actually our identity. And without language, our culture cannot be sustained. It's because our mother language plays a crucial role in shaping an individual's personality, an individual's character, also the psychological development, or more broadly, the human development. How does a person self-actualize within the community? All this depends on our mother tongue language. And also, it's also about our thoughts, our belief systems, our emotions, you know. So it is also the spiritual part, the abstract, unseen part that in some ways drives us, motivates us daily in the way that we do things and in the way that we relate with one another, right? Because it is this kind of belief, spirituality that helps us to see how I interact with another person in the community. So it gives us that certain kind of yardstick as to how I best relate with somebody within the community without conflict. I'm able to compete with my fellow community without risking conflict. So the competition is healthy. And also the way that we support one another in self-actualizing. All these aspects are something provided by our beliefs and spirituality within the community. And all these things are embodied in our language, right? So language is something that embodies, it's also the vehicle of our indigenous knowledge, of indigenous wisdom and worldviews, right? So it's not just about the spoken words, but all the meanings in the communities are what is captured and embodied and transmitted and communicated through the use of this language. And that is why language is so crucial, and therefore, without language, we cannot sustain the existence of our culture, right? So, in that sense, who we are, our roots, is what is embodied in our language. In the present context, and therefore, what happens is, if we don't embody these roots, a lot of the challenges that we're facing today, in terms of whether it is social turmoil, social conflict, the chaotic situation that we may be facing, a lot of the challenges in the modern times that we are facing is related to our inability to establish our connection with our roots, right? And this is also a sign of language decay in many ways that we are facing, therefore. So in some sense, therefore, if the language is not vibrant, we cannot connect with the past, present, and the future. So the unity of this concept of time that we are all aware of and conscious of within the community, and without a consciousness of this unity of time, we can never be stable. And that is what language in many ways help us to unite this concept of time, of the past, present, and the future within indigenous communities. And we were very, very clear with this, right? And therefore, you see the loss of language which Dharmodip has read out in the statement that we have prepared for today. What this indicates is also the decay of our culture, right? It means, and decay of our culture also means the decaying of our identity, right? So how do we make sense of this world? How do we live with some order and stability and sustain ourselves and self-actualize to be grown up as a full human being? That is being affected by the kind of language loss that we're experiencing. And so if our culture is decaying with all these experiences, it means that the structure on which we stand, right? Culture is the structure on which we stand that gives us confidence and help us to make sense of our world, is being shaken. Or the carpet, when you are standing on the carpet or on the rug and it is pulled, you will fall, right? So it means that our ability to stand up on our own with confidence and relate to the world as equal, these things are being affected. And then when these things are being affected, what happens is that our capacity to determine things for ourselves, our capacity for self-governance, capacity for self-determinations, all these things are being affected, right? So therefore, you will see that what is the UNDP emphasizing is the unique characteristics of indigenous peoples, which the world has not yet recognized, and the world is not yet ready to protect these unique characteristics, right? So these unique characteristics are so much part of our language. It is captured, embodied in our language, whether it is art form, whether it is our governance systems, whether it is our spirituality, beliefs, etc., etc. All these things are embodied in our language and transmitted through our language. Now, these unique characteristics are disappearing, and that is also the reason why precisely the UNDP came into existence. And if you look at the UNDP very, very carefully, which we indigenous people should understand, and the world is expected to also understand, and coming up with a declaration is precisely to uphold, to recognize, as well as to protect these unique characteristics. And these unique characteristics can be propagated, can be protected, and indigenous peoples can regain the meaning of their well-being and also the meaning of their indigenous sovereignty if those characteristics are recognized through the indigenous people's right to self-determination. You know, that is what the UNDP is precisely emphasizing. But we still seem to be very far away from understanding the purpose, the aim, and the goal of the UNDP. That is what is saddening, you know. And in all this, therefore, our language, our mother tongue-based education becomes very crucial in the sustenance, existence of indigenous culture and recovery of indigenous sovereignty, right? And one of the sad scenario that we also see is, of course, that therefore the indigenous education has been vastly displaced in the whole of Asia. And there we are trying our best, and we are trying to use this International Day and International Decay to work on this education. And that is where it becomes so important, right? What does it mean that our education systems are displaced? Is understood by what I just described very briefly about our systems of beliefs, spirituality, human development, etc., etc. All those things are being displaced. And as we introduce this modern education system, there is discrimination within indigenous communities, but they were far little as compared to what we experience today. Because when we had our own education system within the community, there was hardly any discrimination between boys and girls. Everybody had to be part of that, the house of learning. Like, for example, within the Naga, we call it the Morung system. When you reach a particular age, everybody had to be part of it. And within that formal education system itself, there was hardly any barrier between that formal education system and the informal part of it, because our education system was based on what really matters in our daily life. So the formal and informal, both of these were part of our education system. So the formal always permeated into the informal, and the informal always permeated into the formal system. And there was hardly any discrimination. So both boys and girls were able to be active part of the education system in interacting and participating in all community activities. And the phrase that I learned from Malaysia when I first went there was learning by doing. No, I reflected very deeply on this aspect. And learning by doing means really participating in our daily life. It's no boundary between the formal and the informal. Unless these two meets and you have a boundary, then the education system remains incomplete. And it is through this participation and what we say learning by doing, that we are able to fully relate with one another within the community, we are with the members of the community. And that is where we nurture bonding, how to live together, how my individual identity is not just me as the individual, as in the Western philosophy, the autonomous person we say, right? And the rights is so centered to the individual that the individual as if have license to do everything else with disregard to anybody else. This is one of the crises that we face in the modern times. But what happens, look at it, the community. My identity is also reflective of the identity of the whole community. And the whole community also accounts for the collective identity of all the individual identities, no? So me is not the self as an atomic particle kind of an individual, but me as an individual is also reflective of the collective identity of the community. So it is an integrated identity that I hold as an individual, for example. So when this kind of education system are being done away with, we might become a misfit. And that is the challenge that we are facing today. Internal conflict, differences, and so on in our own indigenous communities. This is because our education system has been vastly displaced. Another impact that I would say, for example, is that a lot of research today, it is showing that when the mother is also educated, the children are also most likely to be more educated. Education becomes better in a family where the mother herself is also an educated person, for example. But the holistic sense of this education being vastly replaced by modern education system, and a lot of the mothers in our communities considered to be irrelevant in terms of education, is also affecting our young children, right? So for example, look at the current saying, which has always influenced me very deeply to think deeper. The current saying goes like this, that horses draws its strength from its hooves, but indigenous communities draws its strength from its children, no? It's a very, very profound statement of looking into the future, and future not as an abstract, but the future is secured in the present, and concretely, if you focus on your children, then your future is secured in a very concrete sense. It's not abstract like in other communities. So the attention that we used to give in our education system that was holistic was really, really on indigenous children. And that is what we are forgetting. And that is the impact of the indigenous knowledge, culture, everything, which is what I am saying as the unique characteristics that has not been fully recognized and fully protected. What is reflected in the UNDP is essentially that. Our problem is that all of us are educated in a modern sense. We look at it in a very legal and mechanical sense, that we don't know the meaning. We don't know the vision that is packaged or embodied within that, for example, the UN Declaration. So these are some of the challenges that we face, and definitely I am not a practitioner on education. So I'm definitely looking forward to listen to our practitioners who have the expertise on indigenous education. So thank you all for coming and joining this important program, however small it may be. AIPP does not have a program focusing on indigenous education, but a lot of the things that we do actually is relating to indigenous education. The only thing is that we need to understand its connection and its relationship. Then we begin to understand and we can work more on this. And the minimum effort that's like with Suraporn we were discussing the other day is, yes, it is this common understanding that can help us to connect more. And AIPP wants to at least start by connecting these practitioners so that we can share and also streamline, and therefore giving a more sort of an amplifier effect or multiplier effect to the work that we do. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gamp, for nicely articulating the relationship between the indigenous language and then self-determinations. So now next speaker is Mr. Annabel Benjamin Sebera. He's professionally is university teachers in Delhi University, and so also the member of steering committee Global Task Force for IDEAL, basically from Asia regions. Yeah. So Mr. Annabel Benjamin, now is floor for you.
Thank you so much, Charu, for giving me the floor, and it is really nice. First of all, I would like to congratulate AIPP for conducting this wonderful, webinar, as well as this whole event on indigenous languages. I'm delighted to be here and to share my views on the topic given to me, that is scope and opportunities to advocacy, protection, promotion, and preservation of indigenous languages at global, regional, and national level. Well, I would like to state over here that United Nations, especially UNESCO, has been playing a key role in promoting in indigenous languages, as Charu and my friend Mr. Gam has already said that, and in AIPP statement, that UNESCO has already declared the indigenous language in 1999, and in General Assembly, UN General Assembly, it was officially taken as a resolution in 2002. And looking into this, I would like to give you a brief background that in 2019, UN thought that we are promoting different languages in the world, but the identity of indigenous languages is somehow or the other is getting lost. So therefore, in order to protect, preserve, and revitalize the indigenous languages, they took an action and then declared 2019 as the International Year of Indigenous Languages. While conducting a lot of ceremonies, a lot of events throughout the year in 2019 related to indigenous languages, they found that 1 year was not sufficient. 1 year was not sufficient to protect and preserve. That's why in a resolution, they declared year 2022 till 2032 as the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, and most of you must be knowing about it. The basic fundamental idea is, again, to protect, preserve, revitalize, but to regenerate. The whole idea is not only to protect, preserve, and promote indigenous language, but to regenerate those languages which have been lost. And the statement you have already said, and there are more than 7,000 languages, and more than 2,300 languages are spoken by the indigenous people. And officially, the statement by the UN has already said that every 2 weeks, one language is getting disappeared, every 2 weeks. So it's an alarming, it is an alarm for each and every one of us. And in this particular extinction of languages, indigenous languages are most vulnerable. Now, what we have to do? Recently, throughout the year 2020-2021, UNESCO, along with the global task members and along with all the advisory members, we all conducted a global research. Along with me from Asia, Rita Lasmang and Indu Chaudhary was also there in that particular survey. Not only they, but all the people from Asia whom we had connected, they also were, they also participated in that particular global research. And after doing that research through that survey, the findings were that the indigenous language needs to get promoted first and foremost in the youth and the children. As very rightly said by Mr. Gam, that the children and the youth are the future. Unless and until we invest in them, it will be it will be very hard for the indigenous people to to preserve indigenous language. And who is the key person to teach indigenous language to youth and children? None other than the family, and in that family, the mother. I totally agree with Mr. Gam that yes, the mother in indigenous community and in indigenous family plays a vital role in promoting indigenous language and in promoting the culture, in promoting the tradition, in the mind and the heart of indigenous youth and children. Language is not only our identity. It is not only our, way of existence. No, it is much more than that. Language is just like a blood flowing in the veins. If you will take out the veins, if you will take out the blood from the veins, the body will die. In the same manner, language is just like a blood. And I would like to emphasize more that there are various agencies at the global level and the regional level and the national level who are actively participating in protecting and preserving. This year, in 2022, February 21, when we celebrated the mother's language, International Mother's Language, and I got an opportunity to collaborate with UNESCO, the regional office of UNESCO, and with the government of India, and we came up with a project. We came up with a project to do a research on the indigenous languages in India, together in collaboration with the IGNCA, the Ministry of Culture of Government of India, the regional UNESCO office, that is head office in India, and along with different CSOs and the NGOs to do a work. And we found in that particular research that there's a lot of confusion. So what is indigenous languages? But because when we talk about in Asia, and also in India, the indigenous, the word indigenous has been taken very lightly by the people. We have no clear definition about this indigenous. When we talk about India, indigenous, everybody is indigenous. The government of India states like that. But when we talk about ourselves, declaring ourselves as indigenous people, then the confusion is that what is that indigenous language we are talking about? Is it the indigenous languages which is floating commonly across the nation, or are we talking about the tribal languages which are actually there from the ages? So while doing this research, we came up to the conclusion that we have to preserve all the languages. We have to work on all the languages which are currently there in the present context, at the national level, at the regional level. And therefore, we came up with a strategy how to protect and promote and revitalize and regenerate this indigenous language. So I gave a proposal to the UNESCO head office, the regional office, and of course to the global office in Paris, that rather than having a global task force, we should also have a regional task force, and we should also have a national task force. And we have already taken the initiative in order to do this thing, means to, together with the the global task members from Rita and Indu, we divided this region, Asia region, into 3 parts: South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia. And based on these regions, we have appointed ourselves as one of the representative of these regions, and to take care of that region, and to really do something for that region in our own capacity, in collaboration with the government, in collaboration with the CSOs and NGOs. I'm really happy to state in front of you that when I'm talking about the opportunities of advocacy, promoting and promotion of indigenous languages. So in South Asia, what we have done that we have formed a national level committee in India, and 63 members from across India, they're a part of that national committee, and we have proposed these things to the regional office of UNESCO. Very soon from the government of India, we are collaborating with the government of India, the Ministry of Culture, and it will be ratified, and it will be recognized by the government. And these people whom we have selected, now the procedure of selection was very hectic for us, because we have to communicate to all the people. Then after that, we have to shortlist the experts of indigenous languages, working in different areas, not only in the area of education, but also in the area of media. For example, somebody is promoting indigenous language through songs, through films, through short documentaries. We have to select those people also. Those somebody who is very actively doing research in indigenous language, we have selected those people. Somebody who are very good scholars and good authors, good poets, good writers. So we have selected from different zones, and from there the specialists, not only the experts, but also the civil society organizations also who are working in indigenous languages, the professors from the university who are expert in linguistics. So these are the members who are forming the part of that team, and together as a force we are working to revitalize an indigenous language. And mind it, all these 363 members are all indigenous people. We have taken indigenous, when I'm talking about indigenous people, then from the perspective of India, I will try to say that it is scheduled tribe people, the tribal people, because they are so talented in their own stream. And when I'm talking about South Asia, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Pakistan, so we have collaborated with all these members, and we have given this whole idea about how to formalize an institution together with the regional office of UNESCO, the national office of the government, and together with the civil society organization and expert members who are working in this particular area. So we have to come up with some strategy to work on this particular issue. And I would also like to state over here that institutional establishment is very, very important for this, if we really want to do something. Second important thing is funding. We need some funding. I'm really grateful to UNESCO that with the request of, we requested them to kindly fund us for certain projects on indigenous languages, and they were more happy to do that. However, we have to, face many challenges. We have to face many issues in between. But through regular dialogue, through regular communication, bridging the gaps, and narrowing down the conflicts, removing all the hurdles, we tried to come up with the regional office of UNESCO, the government of different nations. Together, let us come together and let us do something for the indigenous language. And these indigenous language will be for the nation building. Because if the tribal community or the indigenous community is been taken care, it is not only that community has been taken care, but the nation has been taken care. And in that manner, we tried to communicate, and they were convinced, and they came forward. That's why I'm also, saying to all of you, let us communicate to the various agencies who are there to support us not only morally, not only emotionally or psychologically, but through various resources, maybe through economic resources, maybe through, materialistic resources, or any other resources. Let us come together and join hands to work for the indigenous languages. I would also like to state over here that when I talk about India, we have got an 8th schedule in the Constitution of India, and the 8th schedule have got 22 languages recognized. However, those 22 languages, and in that, couple of languages are indigenous languages, and they recognize those languages as the national language. The criteria for those languages are that if that language is being spoken by the majority of the people, then that could be recognized under that schedule. However, there are many tribal languages, and I totally agree with this thing, that this is not only in case in India, this is also case with the rest of the world, that there are many tribal languages and indigenous languages which are spoken by less than 10,000 people or less than 5,000 people. In fact, there are people whom I know that there are 2 speakers in the whole world of that particular language. 5 speakers of that language in the whole world. So what about those languages? They are getting extinct. We have to regenerate them. We have to revitalize them. Who is going to work in that particular area? So when I'm talking about India, if a language is being spoken by less than 10,000 people, then that language is not recognized as a national language or the language of that nation. And that is not recorded in the 8th schedule. That's a really, this will really hamper everything. Everything in a sense, this will really hamper the education system, the political system, the way the information gets transmitted to different areas and localities. Because recently, in 2020, the national education policy was formulated by the government of India.
Benjamin, brother, so your time is already ended. So I would like to request you to finish in 1 minute. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm giving 1
minute.
Thank
you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So national education policy was, formulated by the government of India, and in that they have said that they would like to promote 3 languages in the education system: the national language, the regional language, and the local language. And now the problem is, what is that local language? Because when we are talking about the indigenous people, they have their own dialect, they have their own language, which is not the mainstream language, and this hampers the education of the children. So what we have to do right now, we have to formulate certain policies which can include the indigenous and tribal languages across the world, because we know that children can learn very well if they are taught in their own indigenous language. In the same manner, my last sentence would be that I urge all of you to come forward, not only through your own events and workshops which you're doing, but practically coming down the line to work and collaborate with the international bodies like UN, the national bodies that is your government, and of course the civil society organization, to revitalize and to preserve and protect the indigenous languages. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I'm ready for the question. Back to you, Charu. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for your nice speech. I think you brought many issues in relation to the given topics. Most important one is that the engagements of the youths that you brought at the beginning of your speech, that is also most important. So right now, the second speaker, so Mr. Mathura Bikas Tripura, he's the Executive Director of Jabrang Kalyan Samiti in Bangladesh, and he's also the International Mother Language Awardee. So now, the Mr. Mathura, please.
Thank you, Charu. I'm very happy to meet all the scholars today here. And this month is the month of language. Especially in Bangladesh, we celebrate the National Day and International Day together. So I'm happy to meet you all. So I will just present some of the issues regarding the indigenous languages in Bangladesh, and especially the initiatives of government, how they protecting the language of indigenous peoples in Bangladesh, and also the some initiatives of indigenous peoples. We all know that in Bangladesh, we are about 50 indigenous groups in Bangladesh, making like 2% of the total population of the country. Although the indigenous peoples, they themselves identify as Adivasi or indigenous peoples, the government and other literary documents used like ethnic minority, indigenous people, tribal people, small ethnic group, this type of many words to identify these indigenous groups. The indigenous peoples are actually concentrated in Chittagong Hill Tracts mainly, but there are large number of indigenous peoples, the population of indigenous groups in all over the country. Especially, we identify 9 concentrated areas where indigenous peoples live. Like in Greater Mymensingh, we have the Garo, Hajong, Kutch, Bormon, Dalu, Hodi, Banai, and Rajbangshi. And in Gazipur region, we have Bormon, Kutch, and Garo. In the coastal areas like Patuakhali, Barguna, Cox's Bazar, we especially see the Rakhine people. And in Greater Sylhet areas like Sunamganj, Bazar, Sylhet, and Habiganj areas, we have our Manipuri friends, Khasi, Garo, Hajong, Patra, Kharia, Samtal, Orao, and some Tripura people there. And in Chittagong Hill Tracts, we have Assamese, Chakma, Marma, Tripura, Bom, Lusai, Mro, Tanchanga, Assam, Gurkha, Pangkhwa, Chak, Khumi, and Santal. Some Santal people are also there. And in southwest zone, especially Jessore, Satkhira, and Khulna, we have our Bagdi people, Rajbangshi, and Santal. In North Bengal areas like Rajshahi, Dinajpur, Rangpur, Gaibandha, Naugaon, Bogra, Sirajganj, Chapai-Nawabganj, Natur, we have our Santal people, Orao people, Munda, Malu, Mahali, Khondo, Bedia, Bhumijo, Kol, Turi, Bhil, Karmakar, Mahato, Muriyar, Mosohor, Pahan, Paharia, Rai, Singh, these people. And in Greater Chittagong, we have Chakma, Marma, and Tripura especially. And in Charpur and Kumilla, Rajbari region, we especially have the Kokborok speaker, Tripura people. Officially, actually, in Bangladesh, the Bangla is only the recognized language, because in our constitution, it is mentioned that Bangla will be the only national language and official language. So no other languages are recognized there. But we have just some clauses in our constitution, like in Article 28, 3 of 28. We have the constitution prohibits all sorts of discrimination against any citizen on ground of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. So this is only thing which protect the rights of language of indigenous peoples. And in last 15th amendment of the constitution, the government has recognized the the indigenous peoples. Although the word indigenous peoples is not used in the constitution, but the promotion of culture and heritage of indigenous people is somehow recognized in the constitution. And in 1997, the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord, we all know that on 2nd December of 1997, we have the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord signed between the government and the regional party of Chittagong Hill Tracts, Parvata Chattogram Janasamhati Samiti. After signing the accord, we have special provision of primary education in mother tongue in the article B2 of 33 of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord. So that's the way that people, even the government started thinking how the indigenous languages can be used in the formal education system. So following that accord, we found that in PRSP, it was from in 2005, I think. In PRSP, the poverty reduction strategy paper and the primary education development plan, the education in mother tongue of indigenous peoples have been recognized in these two special documents. And eventually in 2010, we have the education plan, national education policy. In this policy, the government has ensured promotion and development of indigenous languages and the ways forward to introduce the languages in the curriculum and textbooks of the government. So ABLE, Mother Tongue-Based Multilingual Education Program in primary education. 5 languages are introduced in the schools, although there are many debates on the implementation process. And we also have one, in 2009, we have one small ethnic group Cultural Institute Act. In this act also, the government has a specific plan how the language and culture of the indigenous people can be promoted. And there was also one in 2006, we have the National Cultural Policy. In that policy, we have one very good clause, like there was one clause stating that there will be one indigenous language institute in Dhaka University, but still we don't see the implementation of this, but the clause was very positive for the preservation and promotion of indigenous languages. So the government has started implementing the primary education program in mother tongue of indigenous peoples. They have started in 2013. The National MLE Multilingual Education Program Implementation Committee has been formed in 2013, where the the representatives of indigenous peoples were included, including my organization. And in 2014, the bridging plan has been developed, how the indigenous languages can be bridged to the national language and the international language. And so in 2017, we have the textbooks in Chakma, Marma, Kokborok, Sadren, Garo. Here I would like to mention that it was supposed to be 6 languages: Chakma, Marma, Kokborok, Sadri, Garo, and Santal. But somehow the Santal people could not catch the train of this first group, because they are still debating on their script issues, because there are 2 streams. There were actually two streams, Bengali script and Roman script. Now they have another script. They are like the Alchiki. So now they are in 3 streams. I don't know whether they will be able to decide this. Actually, they have to do that, because if they want to go to the formal education system, they have to decide which script actually they want to introduce in using in their education system. So in 2017, we have the pre-primary textbooks, and gradually in 2018, we have the grade 1 textbooks for grade 1, in 2019 for grade 2, and in 2020, we have the textbooks for grade 3 in the 5 languages. The indigenous peoples, they have also their own ways, because before before the government's initiative, the indigenous peoples actually they do themselves to develop their writing system and research. Like the indigenous individuals, they have done a lot of researches on their languages and culture system, and also the writing system, orthography, many issues of their languages, and with their own financial supports, they published a lot of publications, although those publications were not sufficient to use in the education system, but still they have done many works, and they have in many indigenous communities, they have their own system to train their younger generation how to read and write in their own languages. So those were very useful for the government to introduce those languages in formal education system. My organization, Jabarang Kalan Samiti, has also started piloting in 2006, piloting in 3 languages of Chiang, the major languages Chakma, Marma, and Tripura or Kokborok. So we have started actually with the support of Save the Children. Then gradually we have been supported by UNDP and Bangladesh National Commission for UNESCO and Ministry of Education, then Mansujana Foundation. So we have piloted up to grade 3, from pre-primary to grade 3, and we have supported the language writers, actually, the linguists of the indigenous people to develop to their orthography and writing system, and to publish books for the children. So like the pictorial books, the word books, and many other books which are important for the education system. So actually, we are very happy that many government officials from ministries visited our fields, and they found that these are actually very useful for the introduction of education system in the languages of indigenous peoples. So after that, we have seen that in 2010, we have the national education policy. Then gradually, as I have already mentioned a while ago, that gradually we have the education materials in our field. So the challenge still, we have many challenges in the education of indigenous people. First of all, actually, there is no language policy in Bangladesh. So if there is a language policy, then all the languages of the country could be promoted in with the support of the government. So I think the policy is very important. And there is one challenge, like we have many good policies, even like the CST Accord, the cultural policy, the education policy, and many others. But the problem is those policies are actually not fully implemented or followed in the field. So that's still remain the challenge. And another challenge is the indigenous languages. We don't have any database on the indigenous languages. no
Mr.
information.
Mathura, so just
yeah.
the one was try to finish in 1 minute.
Okay,
Already
okay.
time
So,
is
yeah, we also have to mobilize the policymakers so that the policymakers are supportive to the indigenous languages. And also, okay, another issue is like we have many languages which are spoken by very few people, like the Rangmitcha language spoken by only 6 people, 6 speakers, and Lara, we know it is spoken by only 215 speakers, and Banai language is spoken by only 600 speakers. So all this, and there are many others. I don't have much time to mention all of the languages. These languages, if we cannot promote and develop these languages and preserve these languages, this will be disappeared. Like I want to mention the Remgitsa language. The 6 speakers who are speaking these languages are with 60 plus ages. So they can, anytime they may die. If they die, then the language will surely disappear from the world, from our country and from the world. So we have to think how we can promote all this and preserve all these languages. And so I would like to thank again AIPP for giving me this chance to share my thoughts on the indigenous languages of Bangladesh. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mathura Vikas Tripura. Actually, you brought so many important things. Mostly the governments in Bangladesh that how has undertaken to protect the indigenous language. So this is the most important actually for other peoples in other countries who are now joining this program. So the most important thing that the indigenous language has been incorporated in the national education policies. This is a very good point that you brought. And second point, also the teaching and learning in 5 languages already had been introduced in Bangladesh, in the school and in the curriculums. So that is also most important. Lots of actually the issues you brought that undertaken by the governments, which is very encouraging and inspiring for all of us. So now I would like to request Surapons Surya Montons. So she's a country representative from Pestalozzi Children's Foundations. She will talk on mother tongue-based multilingual educations in Thailand. So Surapont, now is for you.
Hello, good morning. Good morning from Chiang Mai. Thank you very much. I will share with you about our experience in the mother tongue-based multilingual education experience in Thailand. And can I share my PowerPoint? Can you allow me to share my?
Yeah, already allow, you can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, okay. It still doesn't allow me, sorry.
Fuji, can you check again?
It doesn't allow me yet. It says
already allowed. Try.
Okay. Okay. So who can share? And so only host. It asks me who can share and who can start sharing, but then it doesn't allow me yet. No, sorry, it doesn't allow me yet.
Let me share from my side.
I'll
present from my side and you can.
Okay. Okay, so Okay, then you can share. I have added one more slide, so but it's okay. We can use the one that I sent to you also, no problem. Okay, so then can you go to next slides, please? Okay, so my name is Sue and I work for the Pestalozzi Children's Foundation. And, as you can see, we work in 4 regions in the world. And for Asia, we work in Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Laos. Next slide, please. And so just to put in the context, as I will share with you about our work on the mother tongue-based multilingual education. And this information in front of you, it is already in 2017, no? But just to give you the context, so we have a population around 70 million, and then about at the time about 8% are indigenous and ethno-linguistic minority communities or peoples, no? And then apart from that, we also have migrants, mostly from Myanmar, around 90,000 refugees. But now to note that now the figure is different, much more now, but this is just to give a base. And then the enrollment rate of the children, if you look at the primary is quite reasonable, 98.8, but then when you go higher, the percentage of the enrollment dropped, and that that's means that the children are challenged with to go for the further studies. Next slide, please. So so for the Pestalozzi Children's Foundation, we have been in Thailand since 2006 until now, and our thematic priorities has always been the mother tongue-based multilingual education. And also the other area like intercultural education, and also now we are shifting more toward more digital empowerment. And in the we have the cross-cutting issues like child safeguarding policy and gender equality, as well as environment. We also would like to have the content more in this area. And next slide, please. And why we have been focusing on the mother tongue-based multilingual education? Because it's the bridge, like earlier speakers also mentioned. The mother tongue-based multilingual education is the bridge not only between indigenous language and national language and other languages, but also indigenous cultures and national culture and other cultures. So that is why we have the mother tongue-based multilingual education as well as the intercultural education to promote intercultural understanding. So that the education that we want to promote is that's not the one that will make you forget who you are, but in fact strengthen your personal identity, linguistic and cultural identity, as well as position yourself in a larger society, right? To be strong, to integrate to the larger society, but not forgetting who you are and not forgetting your language. That's also, and also it is apart from breaking the language barrier in the mainstream education, and it's also a very good mechanism to have this model of education. Is a very good mechanism for community participation, because it's the education that value their language and culture. And that's where you create a unique opportunity for the knowledgeable people in your communities and the linguists, the indigenous linguist experts, and to all have a role in the children's education, because this model of education require their expertise and their knowledge. So, and then we have now can you move to the next slide, please? So as you can see that already in 2006 and then up to now, I have to say that in that time when we started, there was no language policy for a long time, and also at the time nobody believed in this approach of education, include not only the government, but also the indigenous communities. At the time, some indigenous communities that they want the children to go to school to learn the Thai or English or not, they already know the mother tongue language, and also the government, the authorities view or perceive it as a national security issue. So, but fortunately, we have local partners that are very determined that this is the mother tongue based multilingual education is a way, a bridge that is, need to have a chance that partner with the local indigenous community that are strong enough to and also the some government Office of Education, Office of Basic Education authorities that I believe want to give it a try, give the chance to implement the mother tongue based multilingual education. And as well as we started with also with the non-formal education. But then later on only with basic education. And I think the model used is similar to the model that Matura mentioned, that, we begin from to implement from the kindergarten until grade 3, and for grade 4, 5, 6, they learn the mother tongue as a subject. So just to give a brief overview, we started with just two languages, the Mon and the Po-Karen, and then later with other languages also like the Hmong, Lahu, and then Skor-Karen, and then Lahu, Daraang in the later stage. And then only in 2010, then there was a draft language policy, but still a draft language policy and strategy. But has been a draft for a long time until only this year, 2022, the language policy and the strategy action plan is approved. So just to give you an idea that when we started with this kind of approach, that it was not easy when there was no policy backup, but then with the advocacy and with from the support from the different stakeholders and partners. So now with the policy, it makes it easier. And we also shift to originally the modality of implementation, it was all manual, but these days since 2020, we also shifted to integrate technology. So like, for example, we digitized the mother tongue based multilingual education teacher training in MOOC, the massive open online course, for example. So I think there will be more and more, the digital component in the MTBME. Can you, next slide, please? This just to give an overview where we work in Thailand, and then we have 5 partners, and all we have the main partner, now we have 2 main partners that are expert in the MTB-MOE. That's the Foundation for Applied Linguistics at the Mahidol University. And these are, and the other partners are also doing like the Women's Education for Advancement and Empowerment, also have implemented at kindergarten level for the mother tongue based multilingual education with the support from these other partners that already have expertise on this area. And then the other partners are implementing like mother tongue education. So to note that the mother tongue education and mother tongue based multilingual education is different in methodology. So next slide, please. So just to briefly mention to you that the mother tongue based multilingual education is like a bridge. You can see in the bridge, and then bridge between the indigenous language to learn the second language. Start from listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and then in the kindergarten level, and then in the grade 1 to 3, both languages, both the indigenous language and the national language become like language of instruction. They work together, as in a later slide, I will show you how it works. And then I also want to point out that the intercultural education is for like more like self, to build self-confidence of the indigenous students, and also to promote intercultural understanding between indigenous children and in the more dominant children too, as I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. So to mention that, basically the mother tongue based multilingual education is to start with the the mother tongue first, with the sequence like listening, speaking, reading, and writing. This sequence is very important, so that, like the mistakes we have made in Thailand for a long time to learn languages. We start with writing, we start in a reverse of writing, reading, speaking, and listening last. That's why sometimes we have a degree in language and we don't speak the language, for example, So this sequence is very important: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, to allow, the development of the child and the development of the, the skills. Next. Just to give you a very brief overview that there are in the components in the mother tongue based multilingual education. You need some advocacy and cooperation, and so you have to make people understand, both not just the government but also the indigenous peoples, that to have a understanding and to see the benefits, and they were the one to decide that for the children this is the mode of education for the children. And creating orthography, this is also an issue, but in Thailand we use the Thai script as with a Thai script to teach indigenous language, but we also maintain the original script. They can learn as a subject later on. But for to integrate in the education system, we have to use the Thai script too. And they have the training teachers components and material development and monitoring, evaluation, and the research. So like all of this, because the education, especially the kindergarten, is purely in the next slide, please. Is purely in the mother tongue, so that you can see here that in the kindergarten, your mother tongue only, listening, speaking, and reading. And the Thai, and for Thai, you have listening and speaking. So the teaching material, curriculum, lesson plans have to reflect the local language and local cultures, tradition, and stories. This is an environment. This is where I say that it is a bridge, a channel for community participation, the fully effective participation in the children's education. So, and then I think linking earlier to earlier speaker mentioned that we have, like for example, AIPP is working on the human rights and environment. And then this is where, if you have the mother tongue based multilingual education, then the many material that produce around the issue of indigenous knowledge or human rights and environment can be simplified and can be taken, integrated in the curriculum and the teaching and learning material in the mother tongue based multilingual education program. And then for grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. So as I mentioned earlier already, that the mother tongue is taught in all subjects, and then the Thai is taught by the Thai teacher, and mother tongue is taught by the local indigenous mother tongue teacher. So as the grade proceed, continue, it's like a sandwich. You imagine the bread is like indigenous language, the filling is a Thai language. So this to make sure that the children really understand what they learn. So then as they pass to the grade 2, 3, the filling become larger. The filling, which is the Thai language part, becomes larger, and the mother tongue becomes smaller. And then, so by the time grade 3, they are really fluent bilingual persons, bilingual students. This evidence. Next slide, please. And next slide, please.
Your
So,
time is already ended, so you can take
okay.
1 minute.
Okay, so just okay, if you are interested in this in detail, this link that I shared this slide, this PowerPoint with AIPP. Actually, I have another a revised one I will send you later. There is a lesson learned of the 10-year experience documentation that shows the improved learning outcome of the students, and as well as the the challenges and opportunity. You can go to the link and download the lesson learned book from us. Next slide, please. And just that, and I would like to mention here that maybe next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we also have the digital component. Now we have created, we collaborate with Education Solution to have the graded reading program application in the mobile phone and web-based, where you can read in mother tongue and Thai and English. Right now, the mother tongue is in progress development, but the Thai and English part is ready. The link is called Module Library, and this is where you literate in mother tongue already, so it's good to have the reading materials. And so this I think we would like to have it accessible in more languages. And I would like to mention that the SIL Bloom Library also available in many languages, indigenous languages, and then the Let's Read of Asia Foundation and books in many languages. And next slide, please. Okay, so I like to mention that this lastly, we should really take the IDIL, the decade, to be opportunity to advocate for a strong mother tongue based multilingual education policy and practices, because throughout the region and in the world, I think because I from the now 15 years experience, I really have with the evidence base that this model is really a bridge for language and culture, and also a model where the indigenous communities and knowledgeable people have true effective participation in their children's education. As you mentioned earlier, that to revitalize, protect, promote the indigenous languages really through the children and the youth. So I would like to say that this is one of the model that can answer some of these questions. So thank you very much. And so questions, I hope that we can continue this dialogue or conversation later. Thank you very much to AIPP for organizing this. And I'd like to mention also Ajahn Kirk is here. He's the expert in the mother tongue based multilingual education at different, at both at the policy level. And if I miss something, and maybe he can also help in answering this. Thank you.
Cannot hear you, Charu.
Okay. Yeah. We are facing actually the microphone problem. A little bit of technology problem here. So they are working now on it. I will just straightforward will go to Sohail Hajong. So he will present now the summary of the book. The name of the book is the Situations of Indigenous Language in Asia. So this is the now he will present the summary and then he will launch the book. Yeah. Then after that we'll go for the questions and answering sessions and then closing. Actually we are a little bit out of our time. So yeah, I will say that not to take much time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Charuda, and everyone. Unfortunately, power has gone here, so I could not open my on my camera. Can you hear me, Charuda?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I am sharing my presentation. So yeah, because of time limitation, I don't go go into the details of the book, but during the
yes
book launching
you are loud and clear.
time. Okay, thank you, Charuda. So just during this book launching period, so I want to share the briefly the contents and important points of this book. I think you are seeing my screen. And indigenous language in Asia. Actually, this is not a big book. It is a update briefing paper. And I would like to thank firstly the writer of this briefing paper, Probindro Shekal. He is from Nepal. And our human rights program of AIPP for coordinating and editing this book. So actually we could not we do not want to miss this special event, no? Celebrating the international. Still we have some little bit finishing work. Then after this event, maybe we could share this book of the e-copy to all through your email address. And the contents table of this book actually are here. We have seen that it has an introduction part and data and statistics part and challenges and threats and good practices and opportunities, and finally the recommendations. So firstly, we have seen in this briefing paper in the introduction part, so the writer mentioned here nicely what is the importance of indigenous language and why it is important, and he tried to figure out the vulnerability of indigenous language in Asia. And also he mentioned the opportunities. No, we have some opportunities to work on this indigenous language. And in the part of objectives, methodology, and limitations, the writer mentioned the necessity to generate an understanding of the situation of indigenous language in Asia. And he discussed on 2019 International Year of Indigenous Language. And this decade, the decade already has been started, International Decade of Indigenous Language, and it will be like 2022 to 2032. And what actually we need, like available data, so and good practices. He tried to collect this some data and good practices for the indigenous language revitalization, preservation, and promotion. And this actually, Yeah, I am sharing. Did you cannot see, no? Sorry. Okay. Hopefully you are seeing.
Okay, we see it now on the screen.
Okay. Actually, review work, no, and okay, thank you, Uncle Ken. And analyzing the existing research, he did a good study. This study focuses only selected countries in Asia, no, not all countries from Asia. Like he selected 11 countries: Bangladesh, Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Nepal, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. Okay. And he also mentioned here the international legal framework on indigenous language, like Universal Declaration of Human Rights guarantees on our cultures, and ICCPR, ICESCR, and CRs, they said in their articles on indigenous language and culture like that. And UNDP, United Nations Declarations, so nicely articulated some points, no, in their article 13, 14, and 16. And it has mentioned the education, mother tongue education of indigenous peoples, and the media on indigenous language and media through indigenous language and others. Revitalization 169 in article also they discuss on this indigenous language importance. And also, you know, the SDG Sustainable Development Goals, it also mentioned the education through indigenous language. And others, we have international legal framework. What our writer, he mentioned in this briefing paper. And national legal framework, already we have learned from, they have some legal terms and the articles on the indigenous language, like India, the Constitution of India 1952, it also mentioned Nepal, the 2015 Constitution of, and in Philippines, and Constitution of Malaya did not say on specifically for the indigenous language, but it cultures and other things also. And data statistics, the data is very important, like overall data. This is populations from numbers is 476 million, and most of the indigenous peoples represented around 5,000 distinct cultures and speak the major for almost 7,000 languages. Around 4,000 languages of them are from indigenous languages. And at present, 96% of world's languages are spoken by only 3% of world's population. It is amazing, no? Only 3% of world's population speak
Yeah.
Suhel, you are disconnected.
Yeah, I think Sohel is disconnected. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, so as we are out of the time, so let that if Sohel can connect, then he can do. So right now I'll go straight forward for the questioning and answering. So from the participants, so if you have any questions, you can raise to the four panel members, and they will give the answers. So I think we can expend 10 to 15 minutes for it. Yeah, I think, yeah, already the two panel members, they already gone. So we might not need time more here. So in case if there is any questions, just will. If no, then we will just straightforward, we can go for the next, basically for closing remarks. So it's still, yeah, if anyone's like to ask any questions.
I would like to say that if anyone interested in a mother tongue based multilingual education, can get in touch with me for, if more, because I think it is difficult to share in a short time. So I just like to open you can contact through AIPP, and I hope that to have this conversation and exchange more. Just my email, and can contact me through AIPP, or I can give my email.
Yeah, thank you, Surapon, for this message here to everyone. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I think that, yeah, Kirk Parsons raised hand. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what Surapon said, because if you look at the International Decades Global Action Plan, the hoped for objective or the outcome, they have 10 outcomes, and the number one outcome is better multilingual education, better mother tongue based multilingual education, government policies and local practices, as well as more teachers who speak local languages. So I think developing an understanding of multilingual education that Sue has shared will be very useful and important for advocacy during the decade. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so definitely we'll take it as important. Yeah, that your point, yeah, is very good actually. Yeah. So anyone would like to share something or want to raise a question? So no, I think. Okay. So I really apologize because of the wiki network. So Suhel could not finish his presentations, but we understood that what actually he wanted to do, basically the launchings of the briefing paper. So that is the thing already, partly he could be able to show us. So this is the main things. So we'll upload this briefing paper in our website, and also Dharmodeep already share in the chat box, so you can see. And then you can later in other days you can see in the AIPP website this book. So now this is the time to close. So right now I would like to request Mr. Gen S. Simre to have some closing remarks and then conclude the events today. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Charu. Yes, apologies for some of the technical challenges that we unfortunately face today. But nevertheless, I'm sure everybody felt the worth of still coming together and see how we can move forward together. No. Yes, I just saw one profound question posed by Uncle Ken, and of course that's worth a lot of discussion amongst all of us. I think precisely that's the challenge where he has put that the replacement of education or education being colonized is kind of an oppressive tool in my own language, no? Against indigenous peoples in particular. I think definitely that's very, very true. We have seen this globally, whether it's in the North or South America or Australia and so on, where education was forcibly imposed on young children of indigenous communities, you know? So that the way of thinking and everything is sort of converted. How to address this, I think, is precisely the big question. I assume that it will take various forms. And that's the reason that in some sense, whatever AIPP also is doing on environment, human rights education, awareness, capacity building, and particularly what we have launched our course on indigenous self-governance, no? It's all, I think these are all related and tied together, and we will need to figure out how we will be working together, especially with the educationists, no? People who are, those of you who are in the field, as to how these things can be brought together as a joint initiative and how the content, etc., would be also enriched in the curriculum. The particular course that we have piloted and has just concluded and would become part of the sort of a regular strategic capacity building program of AIPP on the self-governance is one is really to target this aspect of oppression as we have discussed. And here we're looking at, yes, there is loss of meaning in our lives. How do we define our well-being? What is well-being to us now as a community, individually and collectively? So how do we bring this back? How do we begin to uncover these meanings and recover these meanings and re-internalize and build into our community lives, and in which education is really key to this as now? So it's one of the effort that AIPP has also kind of initiated. Not being an educationist, I'm not too sure how this would also be best be transmitted with the work that all of you are doing, for example. But I'm sure that there is a good way of doing it, and that's the effort that we should be focusing on. And I know I just saw these comments in the chat from Jacob as well. He is from Aman, from Indonesia. The wonderful work, for example, that they are doing, it's not kind of a formal education and all that sort of things, but more suited to the indigenous education systems that they're developing, and which they call it the homecoming movement, for example. It's a very inspiring initiative. And these are types also where we can learn a lot, where I was saying that education that needs to be holistic and need not have or should not have the barrier between the formal education and real life experiences that we experience within the community, you know. And I see that, for example, the homecoming movement being quite an exemplary as an initiative. And I know in Sabah as well, very good initiative, which I'm sure Kurt person is aware. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I just heard that informal conversation that he's just coming back from Malaysia, no? So that is, I think, the connecting point is the starting point for all of us. So the one that Shohel was presenting, which he couldn't complete, but nevertheless, it provides some preliminary assessment in terms of laws, policies, and it would not actually may reflect the actual ground situation, but I think is a way forward in terms of starting with something that we can, and therefore bringing all the people together. And definitely Surapon also has shared the link to the lessons learned of their experiences in Thailand, which I was actually, definitely requesting her to work on it more and also like share it with AIPP, and which she has done, which is, I think, provides us the resources and the way forward. So what we have been discussing, at least here in Thailand with Surapon, and hopefully then others can join from Malaysia, Indonesia, India, and Kurd and so on, is that we want to have some kind of a brainstorming discussions among these few people, at least the practitioners and some organizations working on this, to understand how we may best use of the this decade that has been declared, to our advantage as a way of advocating, at the same time as a way of uncovering and recovering that kind of indigenous knowledge, spirituality, worldview in a holistic sense, and what are the kind of best practices that we can learn from. If we can come up with something like that, that would be ideal as a starting point. And Sue definitely is one that has actually been pushing AIPP, and her commitment is very much there. So hopefully when we reach out to others for this kind of a brainstorming session and come up with some plan and how we might best facilitate, AIPP is not an organization per se working on this kind of bilingual or cultural education and so on, but we have this, you all as the one who's more experienced on this. So what would be, for example, your advice and your thoughts in the role that AIPP can play? And then what will be the specific roles and collective roles to take advantage of this decade, both as advocacy and also as an internal process within Indigenous communities, would be something that I look forward to. And I do believe that you share this same interest and desire. So I would just like to conclude by thanking, of course, Benjamin, Mathura, Surapon, just in short, as we refer to each other more as a home name. Thank you so much. And to Shohel also for presenting that study, which would be made available online on AIPP's website very soon. And all those who have also taken the time to participate and to discuss and to try to make this even more meaningful. I hope that this can forge into some form of collaboration, and I'm sure that's the purpose why you're also coming to attend this. And all the participants, thank you so much for your attention, and we hope that you will also act as the agents in this whole decade that we're looking at. And also to the note takers, Lisa, and our technical people, Fuji and so on, and Charu, of course, for having coordinated, and with his colleagues at AIPP, or my colleagues at AIPP, who have coordinated this event. So thank you so much, everyone. We will get back to you again. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.